All right, guys, let's come to the mats and let's start flat on our back. I'm going to use my ab mat for my head pillow to start off with, since we're not bridging just yet. So we're going to start with our nice flat back, neutral spine, that little gap, that little tunnel between your lumbar spine and the floor. We're going to seat the bottom of the shoulder blades, the bottom half of your shoulder blades, so those bottom ribs sink in. You might feel like the shoulder rolls forward just a little bit, but that's perfectly fine. I want you to keep the rotator cuff for the most part off of the mat. And we're going to bring our right leg up to tabletop. We're going to work our single leg lifts. Keeping that knee bent at that 90-degree angle, we're going to inhale to lower, tap the foot, and exhale to lift. So that nice little hinge at the hip, pulling the abdominals down and in as the leg moves away from the chest. Trying to keep that left side still and stable, and the shoulders are connecting right down the back. One more on this right side, and we'll lower the foot. Make sure the alignment is with the sit bone before you lift the left leg up to tabletop. Drawing the abdominals in and down, connecting all those segments of the core up and in. And we'll inhale to lower, finding the floor by hinging and extending the leg from the hip. Maintaining that knee bend. You could go pointed toe. You could also dorsiflex and work on tapping the heel as well. And you can also scale how much movement you bring to each rep. You want to ensure that the hip is staying stable, the back isn't moving. You've got even pressure across the back of both hips. And one more. And we'll place the foot flat to the mat. We'll bend the knees, draw the heels back, maybe just a little bit closer towards your sit bones, towards your hips. And we're going to work our pelvic tilts. On the exhale, we're going to imprint, tipping the hips back, getting that nice hollow position as you draw the abdominals in deep. Feeling that tension up the back of the hamstrings, and nice and slow as you curl back to your sacrum towards your tailbone. If you want to work on that draw of those lower abdominals, but decrease the amount of lumbar flexion, you could tuck your hands under the small of your back. You could stack them a little bit on top of one another. And then on that exhale, nice little tilt. So you're just getting a slight tip of the hips back. You're not getting a lot of flexion through the low back. And then a slight little shift. It's a much smaller movement. You could also do this with a small rolled up towel. So you can work on activating the pelvic floor, those lower abdominals, without bringing a lot of movement to the spine, especially if it's contraindicated and not appropriate for your body. We'll go for two more. And we're going to float and hover our feet just about an inch or so up off of the mat in our neutral spine position. That small little hover of the feet. Kind of pulling that tension in. Feel those obliques actively engage as they draw to the center of your torso. Pulling to the navel, to your spine. Even weight across the pockets, across the hips. Two more breaths. And we'll lower the feet. Bring the arms down by our side. We're going to bring our right leg up to tabletop as the arms flow overhead. So we're going to exhale up and inhale back down. Adding the arm piece to the single leg lowers. And as the arms glide overhead, being sure that you're still anchoring across the lower half of the shoulder blades. So we're not arching the upper back as the arms go overhead. We're allowing the rib cage to flare. And we'll change sides. Allowing the movement of the arms and the legs to challenge that stability, that rigidity throughout the torso. 3, 2, last one. And arms come back down by our side. We'll reset that knee bend. We're going to go in for that hover of the foot once again. Both feet are going to slightly lift up off of the mat. Draw the shoulders down. Again, we're connecting through the mid-ribs down against the floor. And on our exhale, we're going to straighten that right leg up to the ceiling, stretching that calf and that hamstring, and bending the knee. And we'll alternate sides. Extend, flex at the ankle, and reset. Reconnecting those shoulders, they tend to want to slide up and begin to shrug. And we'll go one more right. And one more left. Bending the knees, placing the feet flat to the mat. We'll do another set of those pelvic tilts. Again, to modify, you can place your hands under the small of your back or a small rolled up towel. Exhale to tilt the hips back, imprint the low back against the mat or your hands or towel. Start to lift the hips just a little bit to get into the hamstrings a bit more. Almost as if you're also pushing your knees forward towards your toes to get a little bit of that thigh stretch, that further engagement at the back of the legs. And then we'll roll through back to our neutral spine. So we're adding a little bit more lift of the hip. And you could also do this from a neutral spine, that nice little hover of the hip, pushing the knees forward so you get that very strong active hamstring at the back of the lower leg, at the back of the upper leg as you drive those knees forward. For this set, this attention is really being drawn once again, as I mentioned, is pushing the knees forward towards the toes, over towards the toes. So we get that stretch and actively engage the back of the upper leg. Last 3. Finishing off that last 1 or 2 reps. We're going to interlace our hands, our fingers, place them back behind the head to support the head and the neck. But we're not going to add our chest lift just yet. We're going to bring our legs to tabletop position and we're going to work our leg changes here. Now with the arms overhead, we have to engage the upper abdominals a bit more, pull into the rib cage so our back doesn't arch and lift off the mat. Inhale, right leg lower, toe to tap the mat, and we slow to change. Pausing in tabletop for a moment. Add a chest lift if you wish to bring in a little bit of flexion to the spine, to the upper back, and we'll continue with those leg changes. Your head is resting back in your hands. So your shoulders, your arms are supporting your head and your neck with your chin slightly tucked. And 3, 2, 1. Feet come back to the mat. We reset and keep the arms, fingers interlaced, hands behind the head. And on our exhale, we're going to draw our legs up to tabletop, double legs to tabletop, and inhale, double feet tap to the mat. Only lowering the feet as far as you can maintain that stability in the spine and ensure that the ribs aren't flaring and the back isn't arching. Last 2. Bring the feet back to the mat. Bottom of the feet connect and touch as the knees angle out for that butterfly stretch. And arms open out to a T position, palms up towards the ceiling, and we just kind of let ourselves sink against the mat and the floor to open and stretch. One more breath. And we'll fold our knees over to the right, rotating through the mid-ribs, looking out over that left arm for that stretch through the spine, allowing yourself to fall against the mat to stretch further through the front of the body. Head comes back to center, that left leg opens back out to our butterfly stretch. We'll take a breath, reset. And then right leg folds over to the left and head and neck rotates right. Back to center. You can start off in that butterfly pose first and then bringing the knees together. Arms are going to come down by your side and we'll bring our legs to tabletop position for our spine twist supine. You want to avoid the rotation for the back. You're going to go straight leg, single leg forward out over your mat versus the twisting through the mid-ribs. Remember, the twist is happening at the mid-ribs, just at the base of the shoulder blades, not through your waist. Inhale, we take the legs over to the right as one unit, lifting the left hip but not the left shoulder, knitting the ribs in together a little tighter, and then exhale to draw yourself back to center. Tightening up that corset through the torso, through the mid-ribs, the farther the legs travel. One more left. We'll hold here at tabletop position. We'll work on our stretches through the back of the leg. Exhale to straighten both legs up with a pointed toe, and then dorsiflex, moving through the ankle, pointing the toe, bending the knee. So we're bringing the lower leg straight up over the thigh. Trying not to lower the leg if we can. For some of you, if your hamstrings are very tight, it's going to be hard to get the leg fully extended. So working on firing the quads to straighten the legs further. You may only get to here, just work that flexion here. Try to drive the heels more. Even if you don't get the knee straight, you're still getting a good stretch. Last one. Drawing the knees to the chest. Letting the tailbone lift just a little to stretch through the sacrum and the low back. And then we'll bring our knees back to tabletop, fingers interlace, hands behind the head, staying back on your mat. We won't add a chest lift just yet. And we're going to go back into those spine twist supine. So we're going to inhale, take the legs to the right, lifting that left hip, but not the left shoulder. You're only going to be able to go about half as far or so as you did before. One more each side. And legs straighten up towards the ceiling, pointed toes. We turn the legs out for that external rotation. And we inhale to open the legs straight across. Dorsiflex at the ankle, draw inner thighs and heels back together. Last one. And knees come into the chest. We'll add a chest lift to go back into a little bit more of that spine twist supine. Bring the knees to tabletop. And on that inhale, legs tip right, upper body twist left. And exhale back to center. Smooth and slow. Chest goes the opposite direction of the legs. Maintaining that symmetry between the ribs and the hips. And we'll go 2 more each side. slow to reset. We'll send our left leg out nice and long out on the mat. We'll draw that right knee towards the chest. Shoulders draw down. And for those of you that shouldn't bring the leg cross-body because of this internal rotation in the hip, you're going to bring the leg out to the side, that single leg kind of butterfly pose with that left leg nice and straight for that adductor inner thigh stretch. Otherwise, we're going to take the leg cross-body. Right arm opens out to the side. We rotate through the head and the neck to look out over the right. And unwind. We'll reset. Right leg is sent nice and long. Again, we'll start kind of with that turnout, that external turnout to begin with for a moment. And for those of you that need to stay in external rotation, we'll stay here. Otherwise, we'll take that left leg cross-body. Left arm opens out to the T. We rotate, looking out over that hand as the knee rotates over that right leg. One more breath. And we'll come back to center. So we're going to work into a little bit of a bicycle movement with our hips and our spine in neutral. So I'm going to start off with my knees in tabletop position. My right leg is going to extend up towards the ceiling. And as it lowers, straight leg towards the floor, I extend that left leg to that L position, bending the right knee as the left leg lowers, and straighten and extend that right leg. Nice and smooth and slow. You can scale your movement. You can make smaller bicycle movements, kind of more up at that 45-degree angle. If going low is pulling on the low back. We'll draw knees to tabletop, pull them in towards the chest. We'll stretch through the back for just a moment. One breath. Come back to tabletop, and we're going to reverse direction. So I'll start once again with my right leg straight just to start the motion out. And I'm going to bend the right knee, drop it down towards the floor, towards the mat as the left leg straightens. And I'm reversing that direction. One full revolution left. And knees come in to tabletop, draw in towards the chest to stretch. And we'll bend our knees and place our feet flat to the mat. We're going to work into our bridges. If you're using a headrest at all, please place it on the floor, or off to the side, excuse me. And we're going to work our bridges to begin with. So on our exhale, keeping and maintaining that neutral low back, we're going to lift the hips up, press the knees forward over the toes, Drawing ribs and abs in, pausing for a breath or two at the top, and then lowering the hips right back down. Working that drive of the knees forward, that flexion at the ankle, that stretch through the front of the thigh as you bring your hips up and through. Working into the glutes, into the inner thighs as you actively engage the abdominals. Drawing the ribs down and in as the hips lift up. You can stay with your neutral spine shoulder bridges. I'm going to transition into the pelvic curl using the articulation along the spine. So the exhale, we tilt the hips back, imprint the low back along the mat, and begin to scoop and lift. Again, still focusing on that press of the knees forward, that hinge at the ankle to get that further flexion at the ankle joint. Pausing for a breath at the top, and then exhale, leading along the bottom half of the ribs, rolling along the low back, and through towards the tailbone. Last one. We'll bring our knees to tabletop position. We're going to go into our single leg stretch. You can do this with or without a chest lift. Hands rest on either side of the knees. If you're adding a chest lift, we'll fold along the mid-ribs to lift the chest. And we inhale, draw that left knee in as the right leg goes forward. And exhale to change. Alternate from leg to leg, maintaining that chest lift, tucking the chin. Hands transfer from knee to knee without twisting through the chest. Two more each leg. Draw knees in. Back to tabletop, we work into our double leg stretch. Arms and legs move away from the midline on the inhale. And arms circle back to your tabletop leg. Again, you can do this with or without a chest lift. Three more. Try not to let the shoulders drop or the head of the neck drop back to the mat, especially as the arms go overhead. Draw knees in, resting the head back to the mat. Rotate the head right and back to center, rotate left. One more each side to decompress the neck. And we'll take fingers interlaced back behind the head to support the head and the neck, moving into our crisscross. We're going to fold the mid-ribs to lift the chest up. And we're going to rotate to the tabletop knee. So as my right leg goes forward, I rotate left. Smooth and slow to switch. Working that rotation through the mid-ribs, maintaining that even spacing between ribs and hips from right to left, no matter which side you're rotating to. Last two here, each side. Knees draw in. We'll work our figure four stretch to open up the hip. Crossing that right leg over the top of the left. Bring that left leg to tabletop. We reach through, grab the back of the thigh, pressing the right knee away from the chest and the shoulder. One more breath and then we'll switch. Changing sides. If the right hip felt tighter, feel free to switch back to that right side. If the left hip feels tighter, stay on the side that's tighter. We'll go for 2 or 3 more breaths on that tighter side. If they felt fairly even, you can do a couple sets back and forth. And I'll give you folks another moment, another breath or two. And we'll unlace. Legs are going to go nice and straight. We're going to work up into our seated position, so we are going to go into our roll-up. Arms are going to start overhead, drawing the ribs and the abdominals down and in. Inhale, arms glide forward, drop chin to chest as the head lifts. And then exhale to pull abdominals up to the ribs, up under the ribs as we curl and roll, finding that C curve. Staying nice and rounded through the spine. And then continuing to roll forward over the thighs. Stretching out, forward over the thighs, either with a rounded back or a flat back. We'll restack, we'll sit up nice and tall. We'll dorsiflex at the ankle, bring our feet, our legs mat width apart. We'll do a few forward stretches. Arms are going to come out in front. We're going to drop chin to chest and begin to roll the spine down off that wall behind us as we reach forward through the legs, through the feet. Grabbing onto the legs or the feet to pull you farther forward to deepen that stretch. Shoulders glide down as the neck lengthens. You could do this also in a hip hinge versus this rounded spine. Restacking on that exhale. Redrawing the spine back up that wall behind you. Sitting up nice and tall. We'll go once again. Drop chin to chest. Forward fold. If you're not hinging at the hip, we're rounding through the spine. And we're reaching forward through the feet if you can reach. Drawing the abdominals up and in. And restacking. Vertebra by vertebra, trying to lengthen and straighten, growing longer and taller, stretching towards the ceiling. We're going to flip over face down for some back extension work. Going face down on your mat. Legs are pulled together. You're squeezing through inner thighs. You tuck the tailbone, activating those glutes. Arms are long down by the side of your body with your palms facing your thigh. The neck is lengthened, nose is floating, face is floating off the mat. We draw the abs in tight and we inhale to lift the chest, keeping those bottom ribs, those two sets of ribs at the bottom connected to the mat. And we exhale to lower, floating our face above the floor. Inhale to lift. Tightening through the whole torso, front and back, as we lift. Fully engaging the whole body to support the spine as we work that thoracic upper back extension. Last one. Bring your hands under your forehead, resting your forehead on your hands. Reset your torso, tuck your tailbone to soften the low back. And we're going to go for our double leg hip extensions. Inhale, legs lift, and slow to lower. Focusing on engaging the hamstrings and the glutes at the back of the upper leg and the back of the hip. Try to keep it out of your low back. Brace more through the abdominals as the legs lift. Anchoring the pelvis evenly against the mat and the floor. It's not a large movement. If we're increasing the range of motion, we're most likely taking it into our low back. So we really want to keep the very top of the thigh, right at the hip crease, connected to the floor, connected to the mat. So we keep this in the back of the leg, in the hip, in the back of the hip as well. 3 more. Lowering the legs. We'll bring our arms out to a T position. Palms are floating up off of the floor. Face is floating as well. And we're going to inhale to lift. Drawing the chest open, squeezing the shoulder blades back. And exhale to lower. Let's add the legs. On the inhale, arms, head, neck, chest, and legs lift. And exhale to lower. Last 3. Hands come by the chest. Let's curl the toes under, and we'll peel up and sit back to the heels. You could do this standing as well. Work more into a downward dog stretch or use a chair. You can sit on the back of your heels or keep the hips elevated. Whatever is best for the knees. We'll curl up, restack the spine, drawing the abdominals up and in. And we're gonna sit cross-legged. You could sit straight legs or do this standing. Interlacing the fingers, bringing the arms up overhead, biceps by the ears. We're gonna reach up and over to the right. Anchoring that left hip. And up and over to the other side. Working these lateral stretches. Trying to pull a little bit of that upper arm over with the bottom arm. And are shifting our bodies as if we're between 2 panes of glass. So there's no rotation back or forward. Last one left. Coming forward and curling and rolling down over the legs. You could change your foot position if you'd like to a butterfly pose versus the cross-legged. If having the feet under the calves is uncomfortable, you could go soles of the feet together and then work that forward roll and that forward stretch. One more breath. And on that last exhale, restack the spine. Sitting up nice and tall, right up out of the sit bones. Lengthen towards the ceiling. Big breath as you stretch farther up. And arms rest down by your side. All right, guys, great work today.